How did the Packers look in joint practices with the New Orleans Saints? We get our first opponent scouting report of the 2022 season. Our pal Ross Jackson from Locked On Saints was at joint practices, and he gives us a look inside this Packers team from the eyes of an opponent.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter at Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the number one Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone that makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Ross Jackson is on the show today from Green Bay, and he has awesome insight on the Saints, on the Packers, and I think he is going to give us a chance to get a view of this team. You hear me talk about this team a lot, right? And I'm looking at it from the perspective of the Packers, whereas Ross is looking at the Packers from the perspective of an opponent. And so he's going to look at things differently. He comes with different preconceived notions, some good, some bad, to be sure, same way I do. And I look at the Saints with some preconceived notions, some good, some bad, some misguided. We just don't come with the full picture. And so you just get to work with what you see. And I think that sometimes can eliminate some of the extraneous stuff, the baggage, and cut to the core of what is actually going on the field, which is a really important thing to do. Before we get there, an interesting thing happened. By the way, the Packers claimed Travis Fulgham off of waivers from the Denver Broncos. He posted a kind of cryptic Instagram about it. Interesting, given the comments from Aaron Rodgers about a young group of receivers trying to find itself. Interesting, given the bounce back performance from the receivers on Wednesday, by all accounts. And interesting, given this come to Jesus meeting that was apparently had, where Aaron Rodgers and the quarterbacks went over some details with the receivers. And you wonder why this doesn't happen more, frankly. Hey, let's watch the cut-ups together. And you watch the tape as a team, and you watch the tape as a position group, but you wonder why more isn't done in the meeting rooms, quarterback and receiver, offensive line and running backs, to try and get everyone understanding these are the techniques, these are the little nuances, and especially with quarterbacks and receivers. I need you to run this route this way. I mean, you watch the QB School, the great YouTube series that JT O'Sullivan does, former Packers legend, JT O'Sullivan. And he talks about, okay, this is normally how this is taught, but in the room, they could be asking for something different, or the quarterback could like it this way. And that is great insight. Dan Orlovsky did a great breakdown of a Romeo Doubs route. And so, okay, this is how he ran it. It's how it's taught, but it may not be how Aaron Rodgers wants it specifically. Now, it was a Jordan Love throw, so you never know. But these sorts of teaching moments are really cool. They're really important, and I think they can be really impactful. That they can have a meaningful difference on how these guys develop. Because Rodgers has, as we talked about yesterday, done the carrot and the stick. And at a certain point, it's really just about finding the most efficient way to get these guys to do what you want them to do. And to get on the same page about what expectations are. And some of it is simple. Asked the official on the sideline, are you eligible? You see receivers, they turn to the official and they point their hand out. They are asking the official, am I lined up properly? And sometimes you see receivers reposition because the ref will go, no, you're covering the whether it's a slot or a tight end or whatever. You have to make sure that these things are done the right way. I guess in a slot, he'd be up. Anyway, not the point. You check with the official. That's a little detail, but it's something you do every play, but it's something you have to do every play so that you don't have penalties in these games or in these practices where you're hurting your team. And Matt LaFleur had a great line. He said, you can't make the same mistake twice in the NFL. We don't have time for it. The teams are too good. It'll get you beat. That's so dead on. So these rookies, they don't have time to be rookies for long. And I've always said, by about Halloween, not rookies anymore. Now you're just part of the team. So I don't want to read too much into someone like Travis Fulgham's arrival that means Doubs and Watson, this is not good for them, or it's not good for Samori Toure or Juwan Winfrey or Amari Rodgers or anything like that. I think the Packers saw an opportunity to bring a player who had familiarity with this offense back, had familiarity with Aaron Rodgers back, who had a nice little stretch with the Philadelphia Eagles back, and give him a chance to make this team, to make this practice squad. You get someone in the building, maybe you have a better chance of keeping them in the building. You still need to build out not just your 53, but your practice squad as well. Yes, we can put to bed the questions about whether or not Sammy Watkins is going to make the team. If he's healthy, he's going to be on the team. The question then becomes, how many do you keep? Because I've already done it. I think there's 5 locks not named Sammy Watkins. So now we're at 6. Samori Toure is starting to make big-time plays. Had a 50-yard rainbow touchdown from Jordan Love in joint practices yesterday. He seems to be making an impact and is a special teams player. It might come down to 2 spots for 1 player. On the other hand, and this is something that Wendell Ferreira, who is a longtime follower and someone who I think does a good job, he actually covers the team now, brought up, and that is, well, if Toure is a better player than Tyler Davis, he should be on the team. Hang the idea that you need 4 tight ends. You can find a tight end who can play replacement level football like Davis, and maybe they did it. Maybe they got the guy from Buffalo, Nate Becker. Maybe it's Alize Mack. You can find guys like that. It'd be nice to have someone like Toure, especially when Winfrey and Toure are both guys who can help you on special teams. Maybe the arrival of someone like Fulgham makes Winfrey obsolete because Winfrey has a little more experience than Toure. Fulgham has a little bit more experience than Winfrey. And now it makes Winfrey over here on the side. And Fulgham will block. He will block. So this whole receiver room just got more interesting. They had a bounce back performance. Sammy Watkins continues to stack good practices. I think he's very clearly now in that group of start. I don't think it's going to be one group of starters because, as we talked about, even if Sammy Watkins is a starter, Allen Lazard is going to be in the slot a bunch. You still need another outside receiver. That's going to be Romeo Doubs for now. We'll see what Christian Watson can do. We'll see what Juwan Winfrey can do, Samori Toure, and now Travis Fulgham. It's going to be a fun couple weeks. It's going to be a fun couple weeks, and these joint practices are a big deal. Toure making plays in competitive periods in 2-minute, that's a big deal. What these guys do on Friday is going to be a big deal. And this is the most competitive spot on the roster. It's the most fun spot to talk about. It's the spot that Packer fans love to talk about every year. Isn't this fun? Yes, it is. All right, we're going to get to Ross Jackson right after this. But before we do that, let's talk about LinkedIn. As you gear up for the fall, you need the right people on your team, just like the Packers need the right people on their team. You need the right people to help your small business fire on all cylinders. LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find the people you want to talk to faster and for free. Create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 800 million people. Simple tools like screening questions make it easier to focus on the candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality leads and candidates. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know every week, nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thanks for making Locked On Packers your first listen every day. However you play fantasy football, get the latest NFL fantasy draft tips. Some people do a snake draft. Some people do an auction draft. Some people do daily fantasy. Get your draft tips from Locked On Fantasy Football and Locked On Dynasty. Plus, starting August 22nd, we're bringing you daily top 10 lists for fantasy draft week. Locked On Fantasy Football and Locked On Dynasty, available on the YouTube and wherever you get podcasts. Joining me now from Green Bay after watching the Packers and the Saints have joint practices. Only one kind of scuffle, which happened on Wednesday. Ross Jackson, host of Locked On Saints, and our good friend Ross. It is great to be with you. Great to have your insight here. Great to have that beautiful picture of Green Bay behind you for those of you watching on YouTube. Shout out whatever local artist did that. I'm so excited to do this because this is like our opponent shows where we get to do a breakdown because you actually get to watch the Packers from the lens of an opponent, even though, it's Packers Saints preseason game. No one really cares about the outcome. I get to get your scouting report on Green Bay. So let's talk about what stood out to you from these joint practices as you're looking at it from a Saints side watching the Packers players.
Yeah, look, the headline of this joint practice session was defense, right? Like the New Orleans Saints defense and the Green Bay Packers defense, two of the best ones in the league. New Orleans Saints have been there. The Green Bay Packers have been on the cusp of that. But I got to tell you, that defense looks really, really good this year. And they presented a really nice challenge to kind of change of pace for the New Orleans Saints too, with that 34, that sort of 3-4 front, which, the New Orleans Saints don't get to practice against that because the Saints are kind of a multiple front, but for the most part are 4 down linemen and 2 linebackers and 5 defensive backs. You're in a 4-2-5 like nickel look for 80% of the time because they've shifted ways with the rest of the NFL. So I think that and then the other thing that's really kind of nice to see from the Packers perspective that I think was beneficial for New Orleans, but I think is going to actually be really good for the Packers going into 2022 is the amount of 21 personnel that they'll use as well. Those 2 running back sets and things like that. Like the New Orleans Saints have been built in an NFC South to have a defense that's used to, going up against. Last year it was Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, and Mike Evans. Now it's Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Julio Jones in whatever order. Robbie Anderson, Terrace Marshall, and DJ Moore, right? Like it's these big, 3 wide receiver sets, and then now all of a sudden they go up against a team that's able to have those if they want them, but can also go out there in a 21 set or a 12 set with 2 running backs and 2 tight ends. So those things really stood out. But obviously the defense was the thing that really kind of headlines the entire event of the joint practices thus far.
And you missed the Falcons with Julio Jones, Mohamed Sanu, and that's right. That's right. That's not what the Falcons are anymore. They don't. Did they have one? Well, okay. Drake London, Kyle Pitts, probably a receiver, but they're working on it. Isn't it cute? Those Falcons. It's so cute. They're really trying over there. I love that you brought up the 2-back set because Aaron Rodgers also brought it up, said he thought those guys could each catch 50 passes, which sounded like a lot, I think, to some people. When then you look at it last year and you realize Aaron Jones was second on the team in targets. He already had 50 catches last year, and that AJ Dillon was, I believe, like 13 or 15 catches away from 50. So if he's on the field 15% more, 20% more, like the 1 catch a game, that's easy work that's going to happen. The thing that you brought up, the defense part of this, we haven't had a chance in a game to see this defense since the 49er playoff game when we went, wait, oh my God, like this defense at its best can be really, really good. The pass rush, the speed, all of that seems to be in place. When you watch this Packers defense, what was it in terms of whatever they were doing, whether it was winning, whether it was speed, what was standing out to you when you watched that where you were like, oh, okay.
Yeah, the pass rush was definitely a big part of it, and it was speed off the edge in particular. Look, the New Orleans Saints they were down Ryan Ramczyk and Landon Young going into this one. That's a couple of their tackles going into Wednesday's practice. And then eventually Trevor Penning ended up leaving with an injury. James Hurst ended up leaving a couple plays later with an injury. So those are effectively their starting 2 left tackles there, or the guys that are competing for left tackle spot. And then the guy that was in at right tackle, or that ended up coming in at left tackle after that, Sage Doxter, he ended up leaving. But don't let that fool you. Like, even before that, the Packers were winning off the edge. Like, you're going to hear a lot about the injuries that came from the tackle position, and there were for the New Orleans Saints throughout Wednesday's practice in particular. But they were also winning those edge rushers on Tuesday when those guys were healthy, and early on Wednesday before they were hurt. So I think that the speed off the edge has been really, really impressive. The second level pressure was also really impressive. Ended up creating some opportunities for some pass rushers there. I know Ryan Ramczyk got called on a holding penalty yesterday, which he doesn't commit a lot of those on Tuesday, but he had to in the situation that he was put in. I mean, they've done a good job creating conflict, and keep in mind too that these are joint practices in preseason, offseason. Like, they're not even showing the whole package yet in terms of what, that Packers defense is going to look like. So even in the sort of quote unquote vanilla looks that they're getting throughout all of this, they're still impactful, and they're still, creating disruption off the edge.
And that was against, that holding call you mentioned was against Quay Walker, who is not, strictly speaking, a pass rusher.
Right.
And Joe Barry has shown some of those interesting looks where he's going to go 3 off-ball linebackers and put one of them on the edge, that sort of old school Sam backer, and let him go hunt if that is what the call is on the field. So you mentioned that this was a defensive practice, or at least they dominated in these joint settings. Okay, let me flip the perspective then from Packers to Saints and look at, okay, Saints defense, which was by all accounts awesome against this Packers offense. And if you're a Packers fan, you might be going, well, we don't have any receivers, and we don't know what's going on with the offensive line, because Elton Jenkins is, although he's back practicing, was not taking part in these joint sessions. And David Bakhtiari, TBD. We don't really know what's going on there. How much of the Saints defense being great was the Saints defense being great versus the Packers offense that couldn't get out of its own way? We heard about the pre-snap penalties and the drops and some of the miscues that they had to.
Yeah, I think that, you have to give both of these defenses credit, because there were those pre-snap penalties over on the Saints offensive side as well as some drop passes and things like that. Like, that's just part of joint practices and all that. But in any case, right, like, defenses and their ability to be able to take advantage of mistakes, that's part of the skill set of what defenses do. And that's something I saw the Packers defense do really well. Something I saw the Saints defense do really well. You had guys like Marcus May walking away with interceptions. You had, a situation to where during 2-minute drills on Wednesday, Paulson Adebo almost came up with an interception in, it was a 3rd and long from Aaron Rodgers, who just put a pass behind a receiver, and Paul Adebo literally hit him in the hands. The former wide receiver did not look like a former wide receiver all of a sudden, because it just bounced right off his hands and went through. And then all of us, in terms of New Orleans media, we're looking at each other saying, well, if you give Aaron Rodgers another chance, this is going in the end zone. 4th and 10 doesn't matter. Like, this one's probably going in the end zone. You gave 12 another chance, and then you end up with a sack, the play right after that by Malcolm Roach. And so I think that, the idea here is that you have to take advantage of opportunities. You have to take advantage of mistakes. If you can't do that, you're not going to win football games on Sundays. And both of these defenses show that they have the capacity and they have the wherewithal and understanding situationally, game to game, to be able to take advantage of those mistakes that opposing offenses are making.
Okay, I'm going to make some Packer fans sad now. Okay, you ready?
All right, let's do it.
I'm going to give you I'm going to put 1 minute on the clock here, maybe 2, and make Packer fans sad that they don't have Chris Olave, because it sounded like on Wednesday he was doing some stuff. So tell me about Olave.
I don't know if you saw my players to watch piece going into Wednesday from over at USA Today, but one of the things that I talked about was Chris Olave being the apple of Packers fans' eyes, but now the explosive weapon of the New Orleans Saints. And so I understand very much like the dichotomy in terms of, what Chris Olave used to be to Packers fans versus what he is in this situation where he's going against those Green Bay Packers, that Green Bay Packers offense. I think that the thing that's so impressive about Chris Olave, and that so many Packers fans and yourself were right about, is that his speed is something that, of course, makes him a big-time field stretcher and deep threat, but it's not limited to just what he can do 20, 30 yards within the line of scrimmage. This guy is impactful in the short and intermediate range as well. And you can utilize long speed in a straight line, but you can also utilize long speed crossing the field and crossing the middle of the field. I mean, Devontae Adams used to do this all the time, right? To where you could just create natural separation by moving laterally very quickly, right? Like it's a very simple concept, but Chris Olave does that so extraordinarily well. And then so when you're drawing number one coverage away from Chris Olave with Michael Thomas being there, healthy, looking good, drawing that, Jair Alexander matchup, which was a very fun matchup to watch all week. You get to see the two speed guys go at it, from the flanker spot on the opposite side when it comes to Chris Olave and Eric Stokes. And that was a fun battle to watch as well. But Chris Olave often won that battle when the quarterback was able to deliver the ball, right? That's where pass rush and secondary symbiosis really comes into play. It doesn't matter if you can't cover the receiver if the quarterback can't throw the damn ball. And that's oftentimes what would happen throughout these practices. But Chris Olave is certainly something else. The footwork is mesmerizing off the line of scrimmage. It's hard to get a hand on him. He's taken so much progress too about how to be able to fight through that contact when you can get a hand on him. That's the next piece of his game that he wants to evolve. And he's made some strides in it so far. And then there are other plays where he gets shut down on line of scrimmage. Like that happens. That's part of being in the NFL. And so I think that, there's sort of this wide margin of his skill set that I think many people just kind of overthought going through the draft process. And I think, thankfully the Saints get to be the benefactor of that. And gratefully, I get to watch him every Sunday because of it. I was such a big fan of Chris Olave's coming into the draft, and so I think that he is going to be somebody that adds another dimension to the New Orleans Saints that we haven't seen in quite some time, beyond just the field stretching deep threat that he absolutely can be.
Okay, that's enough. That was way more than 1 minute.
You said or two.
I'm gonna give you a chance to redeem yourself. Okay, how much of the Romeo Doubs hype train had you heard about going into the week, and how do you feel after watching him have sort of an up and down set of practices the last couple of days?
So my dream draft going into the 2022 NFL draft for the Saints was to double up at wide receiver. And my sort of, I guess, ideal pairing was walking with Chris Olave in the first round and then Romeo Doubs in a later round. I love what Romeo Doubs does. Eric Ezukanma was on that list for me as well. But Doubs is just somebody that is just so dynamic, right? You can do anything with this guy. You can ask him to do anything, and he's willing to do anything.
He's Olave light. I said that before the draft.
He's Olave like with a lot more size, right?
Yeah.
So, you can also get him involved in the run game. That keeps him on the field a little bit more and things like that. So, those are just like the little bitty logistics that I think maybe only you and I get excited about. Like, you look at that wide receiver blocking downfield. Like, he's going to get so many snaps.
Matt LaFleur gets excited about that too, trust me.
Yeah, for sure. And so I love what Romeo Doubs does. I was really excited getting to, see him going into this practice. He was oftentimes targeted, oftentimes came up with big catches. He had a huge catch down the sideline on CJ Gardner-Johnson that could have been called a pass breakup. I'm glad that they didn't call it a pass breakup because I think it's just more entertaining that way, in terms of like keeping the fans entertained during a joint practice and all. But I thought that he performed extraordinarily well. And you're right. I mean, just like Chris Olave, there's so many ways that he can impact the game at all three levels. He's got really good long speed, but his size is hard to pass up on as well, hard to ignore and everything. And maybe it's not necessarily his size, but the way that he handles himself, the way that he distributes himself is pretty impressive. And I mean, he's just one of those guys that like is really kind, super, super kind hearted when you speak to him and everything like that. But out on the football field, he's a dog and he's a lot of fun to watch.
He does have that dog in him for sure. Even if he is a shy guy, it is so funny that those two guys got to share a field, although they often didn't share a field, right? Because just of the way the logistics work, but the acceleration and the smooth way they move, Olave and Doubs, they're so good getting vertical and creating down the field, but they don't look like they're running fast. And then all of a sudden they're just by you. And like Quentin Meeks learned that the hard way on an out and up. It wasn't even a great route from Doubs, but he's just by him because he just can accelerate that way. So he's got some things to clean up for sure. But they love him. Rodgers loves him, despite some of the criticisms that he's offered. I think he does that because he cares and because he sees that there's real talent there. So, the Packers. I have a bit about his jacket size in the Hall of Fame because it's fun to do those bits. But it's really exciting to get to see him. Last thing here, Ross. Especially from an opponent standpoint, I think this is a fun way to get into this topic because fans, certainly of the show, are sick of hearing me talk about Jordan Love. in my understanding is both days of the red zone practices, he looked pretty good, punctuated with a Wednesday day where he was awesome, and then had a great 2-minute drill as well as Samori Toure, 50-yard rainbow touchdown. What were your impressions of Jordan Love?
Yeah, look, I think Jordan Love performed very well in the red zone. I will say every offensive unit probably had their best performances in red zone drills. That was just a red zone team drills. And that's not out of the ordinary. That's pretty usual for practice, like let alone, unfamiliar opponents across from you in a joint practice. That's usually pretty familiar in practice altogether. But that 2-minute drill that he led at the end of it, which was the only offensive score in any of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different 2-minute drills that we saw over the course of the 2 days, right? We saw Jordan Love do 2. We saw Rodgers, Dalton, Love, and Book each lead 2, 1 on each day. And then Danny Etling got like kind of 1. I'm not really sure what was going on with that. It was like everybody huddled up. It felt like the end of practice, and all of a sudden they were like, let Danny get a shot. And then he was out there. And then the clock actually read like 5 minutes instead. I don't know. It was weird. But anyway, so outside of that, like that was the only touchdown in terms of offense, any of the offensive drives during that. So I thought that he was resilient. I thought that he was somebody that responded very well, which is hard to find in a young quarterback. I mean, you look at Ian Book, one of the things that he struggled with is that he doesn't have the rebound. He has to build momentum. And so if he starts off with a good day, then he has a good day at practice. But if he starts off with a rocky day, he usually finishes with a rocky day, right? If he goes out there and throws 2 interceptions to start practice, then he's not going to rebound, right? But when you look at guys like Aaron Rodgers and Jameis Winston, who has a lot of experience now, of course, Andy Dalton, who has a ton of experience, over 160 plus games started, those guys have the ability to rebound. Jordan Love is already showing that. And I mean, if you're going to have a short memory at any position outside of maybe quarterback is probably the most important place to have it. And so I was impressed with what Jordan Love was able to do. There were a couple of times where he held the ball a little long, which maybe just comes with either this is where you're kind of fine tuning. Okay, how fast does that receiver run? How far do I have to put it out ahead of them? Where is what is their catch radius? What is their catch box? Where do I have to place things? Some of that is just like the logistics getting in the way in terms of trying to calculate stuff as opposed to just having the chemistry. But I think that I thought that he looked really good, particularly on Wednesday, where he led that 2-minute drill or 2-minute drive for that touchdown.
And also, no game planning. Matt LaFleur said they didn't really watch a Saints tape to get ready for this. And you're talking about one of the best defenses in the league, even with the twos. It's a Dennis Allen defense. It's going to be confusing. It's going to be disciplined. And so, I think that's a really great point, really great insight, which you always offer. That's why you're here. That's why we're having you on. Ross, thank you so much, my friend.
I got one question for you before we get out of here.
Let's do it.
I got one question for you before we get out of here. Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs, at this point, knowing what you know, would you prefer those 2 receivers over Chris Olave, or would you take Chris Olave in place of those 2 receivers?
Oh, we're talking about like if Mickey Loomis called Brian Gutekunst tomorrow and said, here's Chris Olave straight up for Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs.
Yep.
I'll take the 2.
You'll take the 2. I love it. I think it's a wise choice.
I think for no other reason than I'm getting more chances to hit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think Chris Olave is awesome. I think he's clearly better than those 2 other guys as a prospect, but I think the other 2 guys are really talented. And I think the gap between the likeliness that any one receiver in the top 100 hits is like kind of small. So I think just 2 shots is better than 1. Plus, I don't think the gap between Olave and Watson in terms of pure talent is that big.
It's not astronomical. No.
So, and we didn't get to see, you didn't get to see a ton of Christian Watson. We have not gotten to see much of Christian Watson in training camp, but it's an interesting question. And it's kind of one the Packers got to answer, right? Because they traded up for Watson instead of Olave, which the Saints did. And the Packers still got a chance to get Doubs later in the draft. I thought Doubs, I was with you. I thought he was a top 100 player all day.
Oh, man.
And I can't believe the NFL let him fall. And so now they have to reap what they sowed and let Aaron Rodgers throw him the ball, and he's going to go to the Hall of Fame. So that's the situation. Ross, thank you so much for coming on. And we'll do this again soon.
Absolutely, buddy. Appreciate you.
Thanks to Ross for joining the show. Love talking to that guy. Great guy. And knows ball. Loves the game, knows the game. And that was really fun for me to get his perspective from what he's seeing from a Saints perspective. I'm so glad that worked out and he got to do that. We talked longer off air about what he was seeing and what was going on there. And by the way, he wanted to make sure, because he didn't get a chance to say it on air, but we talked about it off air, and he wanted to make sure I said it. He loved being in Green Bay. Loved. So the people were so hospitable. The Packers local media were so hospitable. He got invited to a farmer's market with some of the TV people. Shout out to those ladies who invited Ross to the farmer's market. You love to see it. Get some veggies, some fruits, maybe some artisanal jams. Ooh, I've got a triple berry that I got from the farmer's market. That's really good. So I wanted to make sure that he got that plug in there for the people of Green Bay. He loved it. He loved it. So good job by you. Before we finish up, an important message that I want to share with you. You're hanging out with some friends and putting back a few drinks. Maybe you've had a few too many. As the evening comes to an end and people start to head out, you think of calling for a ride. Nah, you live nearby. You can make it home. It's not a big deal. What are the odds you're going to get pulled over anyway? And even so, what's the worst that could happen? Your insurance goes up. You lose your license. You lose your job. You total your car. You kill someone. Everyone knows about the risks of driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel under the influence. That's why police officers are out right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again. Play it safe and plan ahead to get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. And thanks for making Locked On Packers your first listen today. Make your second listen Locked On Fantasy Football. Find the intellectual expert. I don't know why I can't say that one. Intellectual expert, Vinny Iyer, who brings over 20 years of NFL expertise and a unique angle to give you the moves no one else has. Get ready for your fantasy draft with Locked On Fantasy Football. All right, we're going to be back tomorrow, a Summer Friday conversation, and then it's Packers, Saints, ready to go. Preseason game number 2. Jordan Love gets the start. We'll see if the Packers starters play at all in the third preseason game. This might have been it, the joint practices, but Matt LaFleur's been cagey about it. And I don't know why he would still be cagey about it if there wasn't actually a chance that they play in the third preseason game. So something to keep an eye on. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers. And anytime you want to hit us up on the Locked On Packers fan hotline, you can do that, 920-341-3775. Stay Locked On Packers.